Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Spencer, and today we're going to be sketching something that a few of you have actually requested. If you haven't seen my video before about how to sketch and render a cylinder, today I'll be talking about how to properly shade a lit sphere. So grab your pencil, we'll be using that today, and let's get right into it. So the first thing, of course, is we need to understand what a sphere is and how it kind of works. So if I draw something like a cube here. A cube is basically the building block for anything you draw, especially if it's geometric in three-dimensional space. So here we have a cube, backside drawn through as well. All right, so I understand the sphere. If you take a ball and you cut that ball, okay, across, down the middle, diagonally, anywhere on that ball, it's going to be a circle, right? As long as it goes through the middle of that ball. So we can kind of do the same thing here on our cube to actually construct the sphere. Now, for those of you who are a little quicker in terms of understanding this, you might be wondering, why is he going through all this stuff? Well, I'll show you guys. So let's say I have a nice ellipse on the middle, okay? An ellipse, remember, is the shape of a circle if it's in perspective, okay? And let's do another ellipse on this square. You can also check out my video about how to sketch ellipses to help you understand this. And let's do another ellipse, okay, on that square like so. All right, so I've essentially taken a sphere, and the cross sections of that sphere, and now I'm drawing those on the paper, okay? And then on the outside of this, let's use a nice color here. Let's go with a red. I'm using different colors to show you guys each of the planes. So if I take this red and I just kind of trace the outside here really slowly, you can see where these are all touching, I end up with a shape like this, like a ball, okay? And that's how you can kind of understand a sphere in perspective. It is essentially a ball, right? Just a circle like that. Now, why is this important? Well, again, be sure to check out my video about how to shade a properly lit cylinder, because that explains a lot of the mechanics about how light interacts with that cylinder. But for those of you who haven't watched the video, here's just a quick dive into that. Let's just touch down and see what we can learn here. So if I'm looking at this cylinder, here's my eyeball, and I'm looking this way, and let's say I'm lighting this, not cylinder, the sphere from this side, okay? As light passes this edge, I get a shadow core. I'm just going to abbreviate that with SC. And at some point on this cylinder, again, watch my video and I explain how this actually works, but light is going to be reflecting toward my eye, okay, more than the rest of this cross section, okay? And then this area is where I get a nice highlight. Now with a sphere, you can see that I've essentially have these cross sections on the sphere kind of mapped out. So you can kind of treat this little area right here like you would a cylinder, right? And the only difference is, instead of being uniform, straight up and down, the sphere, you can kind of think of it like taking the top of that cylinder and just going, sucking it right in, okay? And then taking the bottom of it as well and sucking it in and kind of smushing those. And then you get like curvature all the way around. So kind of think of it that way. Use your visual or mental muscle to try and understand these forms, because it's really fascinating stuff. So you can kind of think of it like, as you take cross sections up this sphere, so here it is on the table. If I take slices going all the way up, okay, those slices are going to get smaller and smaller. And so my shadow core will kind of move, right? And so you get this like shadow core here, if this is the top, and you'd have the same thing happening on the bottom. Okay, so what does that mean for shading with pencil? Here's the magic. So understand the principle, now we apply the principle. So I have with me my trusty Prismacolor pencil here, And if you haven't yet, be sure to warm up your shoulder. You can see I'm drawing with my shoulder, right? Pivot, pivot, lock this point. Draw with your shoulder. All right, so here I have a nice circle, okay? We'll get into shadows another time, but I'm just gonna throw a shadow on the page here. So I'm gonna assume my light source is coming from this side, the top and the left. Well, what does that mean for the shadow core? Well, in fact, let's go ahead and draw a couple more circles here on the page, and I'll show you 3 examples. So let's say I am observing a sphere, and it's completely lit from the side, like so. Well, 1/2 of this is going to be completely in shadow, okay? So really, I could just take my pencil like so, and just kind of apply a nice even tone, just straight across, okay? Because at this point, this is where I get the most shadow happening, right here. Now you might be thinking, that doesn't look very round. Well, yeah, it doesn't, but that's really what would happen, okay? If this is really well lit, on the one side, I'm gonna get shadow and light, okay? So light here and shadow here. Well, what if I'm lighting my sphere straight on like so, okay? Well, truth be told, there is some peripheral light, okay? And not really peripheral, but atmospheric, extra ambient light. That's the word, ambient light, right? So in any environment you have, even though you have, woo, excuse me, even though you have one light source, take 2. In any environment, you're going to have, even if you have one light source, you're going to have some ambient light as well, meaning that even though this is completely lit, dead on, I may have some other light source, okay? So to kind of show this, just a little bit of shadowing on the fringes here, okay? But really, this is kind of what you'd see. Shadow on the fringe, like so. Just take my pencil, and if you apply a little bit of pressure to the outside here, a little bit of pressure like this, you can kind of see it looks like a sphere, but it's really not the most descriptive. Adding something like a shadow kind of helps us a little bit, right? But really, the reason I light things from an angle is because you'll get a nice highlight and you'll also get a nice shadow core, okay? So, what does that mean for our sphere here? Well, if we're lighting from the side, it's almost like this line, right? And this line kind of moves around. So now when I'm shading with my pencil, I'm going to shade in my shadow core like so. And then kind of blend that out just ever so lightly all the way around. And you can continue to work this core shadow or shadow core just back and forth. And depending on how shiny the sphere is, right, you're going to have either a nice crisp highlight area or something that's a little bit more blended. I'm assuming this is a more matte sphere. I'm just focusing on capturing my shadow core, like so. And remember, this entire time I've got my pencil on the side, okay, which gives me a nice, wide lead to work with. If you want to use the same pencil, I'm using a Prismacolor Premier pencil, and the link, as always, is in the description below the video, so you can check that out. You can do the same thing with a lead pencil if you choose. I find that the colored pencils don't smudge nearly as much, okay? But again, you can see I'm slowly just working this in, punching and pushing the contrast so that now my form is starting to read like a cylinder. Or or sorry, like a sphere rather. And now I'm going to continue to work on my blend up to my highlight. And that's just by varying the pressure on the pencil rather, as I approach my highlight area right up here. All right, and that's how I would properly shade a cylinder, or sorry, a sphere. And really you can apply this technique to a variety of objects. So I like to think that as I sketch, I think in terms of primitives, and if you want to think of something more organic, say for example, what if I took my finger and pushed in the top of this? We'll do this in another video, right? If I took my finger and just pushed on this ball, this shadow core would essentially follow the ball like so, and I can mimic the shading to communicate that form. So if you think in terms of primitives, you can really apply this to a lot of things. You can apply it to your figure drawing. If you like to draw robots like I do, you can apply this stuff to cars, soft goods, backpacks, shoes, that kind of thing. So understanding the principles are critical. I know it's a simple thing, but it can really make the difference in your drawings. Well, thanks again for joining us here on sketchaday.com. It's been really fun. Hopefully you had fun too and were able to follow along and learn some really good stuff. If you like what you see, be sure to subscribe to our channel at sketchaday.com on YouTube. And you can find me on Instagram at sketchaday.com as well, same as the YouTube URL. And that way you'll see some of the other drawings that I post during the week that aren't here on YouTube. You can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/sketchaday. We'll see you next time on Sketchaday.